everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kayla and it's time to crack into a good book. So today's video is going to be about the January releases that I'm particularly excited about. So there's quite a few releases coming out this month and I've managed to narrow it down to this list of 13 books, and there's a lot of books that I'm kind of unsure about, I think, so I'm gonna monitor those and check out reviews before committing to them, but these ones I feel pretty good about. We'll go ahead and get started, and like always we'll start at the beginning of the month and move our way through the month. So the first book I'll talk about comes out January 5th, and that's Star Wars Light of the Jedi, and this is the first book of the this High Republic series that's coming out, and this is by Soule. So this I'm super excited about. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of Star Wars. So this takes place, before the Phantom Menace, and basically, it's like the heyday for the Jedi. Basically here, I think there's some sort of shocking catastrophe in hyperspace that tears a ship to pieces, and the flurry of shrapnel emerging from the disaster threatens an entire system. So then, the call for help goes out, and the Jedi are racing to the scene, but I guess this, the scope of this disaster is enough to push even Jedi to their limit. The Jedi must trust in the Force to see them through a day in which a single mistake could cost billions of lives. So even as they're trying to battle against this calamity, something truly deadly grows beyond the boundary of the Republic, and this hyperspace disaster is far more sinister than they could have suspected. I think there's a threat that hides in the darkness. I'm assuming that's probably going to be some sort of Sith Lord, but this sounds super great. I obviously am a huge fan of Star Wars, and I particularly have enjoyed the books that deal more with the Jedi and early days. For instance, I think the Master and Apprentice book by Claudia Gray is really great, and I do like Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, but this one is, even earlier, so it's kind of this whole new era that we really don't know much about, and I think, I'm not sure exactly how many books are coming out so far in this. I think there's at least this one, there's I think a YA book, and then I think there's at least one middle grade book and possibly some comics as well. So I'm very curious to see what it is that they are going to do in this time period, I guess, and I think the authors have been given somewhat free reign in terms of creating new characters and everything. Obviously, we've never seen any of these people before, so we don't really know much about them. I think it looks like on the cover we've got some sort of Wookiee Jedi, so I'm very curious about that. But I remember when, the High Republic was originally announced, they had, I think there were 5 different characters that they gave us a little bit of an intro to, so I'm super excited to see what this is all about. The next book I'll talk about that comes out January 5th is The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins. So this is some sort of retelling of Jane Eyre, I believe, that takes place in the South. So we have Jane, who I think has, if I'm remembering this right, I think she moved from Arizona to Alabama. She's just a broke dog walker in this Thornfield Estates, which is this really fancy gated community, essentially. So it's the kind of place where no one will notice if Jane lifts the discarded tchotchkes and jewelry off the side tables of her well-heeled clients, where no one will think to ask if Jane is her real name. So her luck changes when she meets Eddie Rochester. He is recently widowed, and he's the most mysterious resident. So his wife had drowned in a boating accident with her best friend, and their bodies were lost to the deep. So Jane sees an opportunity in him because, he's got some money and he's handsome, but he could also offer her some protection, perhaps. So they're falling for each other, but she's increasingly haunted by the legend of his previous wife. She's an ambitious beauty with a rags to riches origin story who launched a wildly successful Southern lifestyle brand. So how can Jane ever measure up to this? And, can she win Eddie's heart before her past or his catches up to her? So that sounds awesome. Actually, of the classics that I read, I really enjoyed Jane Eyre quite a bit. So I'm very curious to see what exactly is happening here, and I feel it kind of mentions in this vivid reimagining which Mrs. Rochester will get her happy ending. So I feel we've got some nefarious things happening here, and I do really enjoy these gothic horror, gothic thriller type books. So I think that this reimagining sounds particularly exciting, and I also I could be misremembering that Jane moves from Arizona to the South, but that's kind of similar, I guess, with me. I've moved from Arizona to North Carolina, and while North Carolina isn't the deep South, it's still kind of a similar journey. And like, granted, I'm not a broke dog walker, nor am I like stealing things from clients. So a little bit different from Jane there, but I'm really curious to see how this goes. The next book I'll talk about that comes out January 5th is Hold Back the Tide by Melinda Salisbury. So this is actually out everywhere, I think, other than the US. So, you know, I'm super excited for this to actually come to the US. I think it sounds really awesome. But this seems to be a YA fantasy horror type book, where basically it's like, here are the rules of living with a murderer. 1, do not draw attention to yourself. But when you live with a murderer, this is obviously impossible. So then the next rule is 2, if you can't be invisible, be useful. So I guess everyone in this quiet lakeside community knows that Alva's father killed her mother all those years ago. There wasn't enough proof to arrest him, and so she just has to live with him, doing her best to survive until she can get enough money to run away. And I guess one of her chores is to monitor water levels in the loch, which is a task her father takes really seriously because their family has been guardians of the loch for generations. And so it's a cold, lonely task, and a few times Alva can swear she feels someone watching her. So as she investigates more, she kind of realizes that the truth can be more monstrous than lies and that you can never escape your past. So I've heard really great things about this book already. I do know some things about it, but in terms of like certain paranormal aspects that I'm very excited about, but I think I'll refrain from mentioning them in case that's like a mild spoiler. I like that it takes place in the Scottish Highlands. I think that you know, this loch setting could offer some creepy moments perhaps. And, you know, it just sounds like super dark and really awesome, and I'm very excited to read it. The next book that comes out, strangely enough, the physical version comes out January 8th, but the Kindle version comes out the 12th, so, you know, sometime in January. But that's Blood Heir by Ilona Andrews. So this takes place in the Kate Daniels world, which is an urban fantasy series that I really love, but we are now following Julie, who is the ward of Kate and Corinne. So basically, you know, we're still in Atlanta, and we have these waves of magic and technology. It's a place caught in a slow apocalypse where monsters spawn among the crumbling skyscrapers and supernatural factions struggle for power and survival. So 8 years ago, Julie left Atlanta to find out who she really is, but now she's back with a new face, a new magic, and a new name, Aurelia Ryder, drawn by the urgent need to protect the family she left behind. An ancient power is stalking Kate Daniels. It's an enemy unlike any other, and there's a string of horrifying murders. Yes, so if Aurelia's true identity is discovered, those closest to her will die, so she's basically like, I gotta get in, solve this, and prevent a prophecy from being fulfilled, and then get out. So she expected danger, but never anticipated that the only man she'd ever loved could threaten everything. So I don't know, I'm really excited about this. I love everything Ilona Andrews does. I'm very excited to return to this world of Kate Daniels, and I'm super curious to see, like, to actually follow Julie. And, you know, like, we obviously saw her some in the original Kate Daniels series, and she seemed, like, super interesting. And I seem to remember she, like, had an ability to detect, I guess, auras of magic. I could be completely misremembering, or that maybe that was like a device she had. But she's definitely an interesting character, and I'm super excited to follow her in this particular installment. Alright, so now we move to January 12th, and the first book I'll talk about here is The Last Exit by Michael Kaufman. I had kind of seen some similarities with, or like mentions of like, this could be good for fans of The Gone World by Tom Swearlich, which I read last year, I think, and really enjoyed. It was like super trippy time travel type stuff. So here, this is set in Washington, D.C. in the near future, and climate change has hit hard, and there's some sort of controversial longevity treatments that are only available to the very rich. So we've got this resourceful young police detective, Jen, and her partner, which is a SIM implant in her brain and an instant link to internet and police records, and also just like this constant voice in her head. So he's an inquisitive, tough guy with a hell of a sense of humor and his own ideas about solving crimes. Jen is a detective in the Elder Abuse Unit, and she's supposed to be investigating kids pushing their aging parents to exit so that they're eligible to get this longevity drug. But basically there's persistent rumors about an illegal version of this, and there's some sort of bizarre outbreak of people aging almost overnight and then suddenly dying. So it's like, is this all connected? Is Big Pharma involved? And as her investigations kind of lead her closer to the truth, she's suspended. Chandler, this SIM implant, is deactivated, and her boyfriend is freaked out by the thing inside her brain. So she's left to investigate things that are very dangerous all by herself. So that sounds super exciting. I don't know how close, I guess it is, to the Gone World. I'm not sure that this necessarily has time travel involved. I feel like it's going to be a similar tone in terms of like being a thriller set as like, you know, we've kind of got this like apocalyptic sort of setting, I guess. And I'm very curious about this whole like eternal life situation. All right, the next book I'll talk about that comes out January 12th is People Like Her by Ellery Lloyd. I think this is a thriller. And we basically follow an ambitious influencer mom. So, you know, it's like to her adoring fans, Emmy is the honest Instamum who always tells it like it is. To her skeptical husband, who's a washed-up novelist who knows how creative she can be with the truth, she's a bread-winning powerhouse, chillingly brilliant at monetizing the intimate details of their family life. To one of her obsessive followers, she's the woman who has everything but deserves none of it. So Emmy's marriage starts to crack under the strain of her growing success, and her moral compass veers wildly off course, and so she's becoming more vulnerable to a very real danger. And it just seems to be a deeply addictive tale of psychological suspense. So it's, you know, talking about questions about technology, social media, celebrity, and how we live, you know, probing the dark side of influencer culture and, you know, just living your life online. So that sounds like a lot of fun. I've talked about this previously, but like I tend to enjoy books that kind of like examine social media culture, especially because, you know, like I'm obviously putting this video out on YouTube. So it's just been like really interesting, I guess, to get other perspectives on, you know, the good and the really awful, I guess, of social media in terms of, like, here, you know, we've got some like, creepy stalker people, it sounds like. I feel like that can make for a lot of, like, really tense moments, especially with thrillers, so I'm very curious to see how this goes. Now we move to January 19th, and the first book I'll talk about here is Hall of Smoke by H.M. Long. So this is an adult fantasy, and basically we've got warrior priestesses and fickle gods at war. So that already sounds awesome. So our main character is a warrior priestess of the goddess of war, and she has the power to turn an enemy's bones to dust with a scream. So she's banished for disobeying her goddess's command to murder a traveler, and so she's praying for forgiveness alone on the mountainside. Basically, while she's gone, raiders raise her village and obliterate this priesthood, so she is the last priestess, I guess. And so she's trying to find this traveler and atone for her weakness and secure her place with her loved ones in the high halls. So we've got clans from the north and legionnaires from the south tearing through her homeland and like slaughtering everything in her path, so she's our main character trying to win back the favor of her goddess. We've got zealot soldiers, deceitful gods, and newly awakened demons facing her at every turn, so she's burning a path towards redemption and revenge, but I guess along the way, we realize that the gods are dying and the high halls of the afterlife are fading, and so her trust in the goddess weakens with every unheeded prayer. So she's put into a battle between the gods of the old world and the new. So, like, that sounds... Oh, and we've got bigger, older powers slumbering beneath the surface of the world that are about to wake up. Oh my. Yeah, that sounds so good. Like, I'm so excited about this. I think this is going to be awesome. You know, I really enjoyed, like, this seems to have a lot to do with mythology, which is, of course, something that I very much enjoy, so I'm super excited about that. It seems kind of like lots of war, lots of just, I don't know, crazy moments. I'm very curious about these older powers slumbering beneath the surface of the world. That sounds ominous. So, yeah, I'm super excited for this. And it does mention, you know, it's perfect for readers of the Chronicles of the Unhewn Throne by Brian Stabley, and I've only read the first one of that so far, but I really loved it, so that makes me super inclined to think that this is also going to be a very good fit for me. The next book I'll talk about that comes out January 19th is The Forever Sea by Joshua Phillip Johnston. So this is an adult fantasy, and it's the start of a new series where basically we have this sort of like endless grass sea. So it's known as the Forever Sea, and our main character, Kindred, is a hearthfire keeper and sailor aboard a harvesting vessel. So she's, I think, starting to fit in with this crew of her new ship, but when she receives devastating news that her grandmother, who is a legendary captain, has stepped from her vessel and disappeared into the sea. But the note she leaves to our main character kind of suggests that this isn't suicide, but something is waiting in the depths, and this grandmother has set out to find it. So our main character essentially is like, you know, trying to follow her grandmother. And so she gets involved in conflicts bigger than she could imagine. So we've got a water war below the surface of two cultures, some politics of a mythic pirate city, yes, floating beyond the edges of safe seas, battles against beasts of the deep, also yes, that are driven to the brink of madness and an elusive promise of a world beneath the waves. So, it's like she finds out she'll sacrifice almost everything, the ship, a crew, and a life sailing in the sun to discover the truth of the darkness that waits below the forever sea. So that sounds so cool. I'm a big fan of books that like fantasy books in particular that have some sort of pirate aspect. That's always awesome. I'm very intrigued by the fact that this sea is made out of grass. That sounds like very interesting. And this is also pitched as being like an environmental epic fantasy series. So I'm super curious to see, what that is all about. I like that it mentions battles against beasts of the deep. Like, obviously, Kraken is in my channel name here. So, I don't know if we have any sort of, mysterious sea krakens or things like that. But I love, just, gigantic monsters, especially ones lurking in the deep. I mean, granted, this is, grass sea. Perhaps we'll get some sort of strange new beasties. I don't know. I'm very curious about that. But this sounds very intriguing, and I can't wait to find out what is going on here. The next book I'll talk about that comes out January 19th is Shipped by Angie Hockman. So I think this is the only romance that I have to talk about today, but this sounds so much fun, So basically, we've got Henley, who is one of our main characters, and she's been taking night classes for her MBA and has this demanding day job at a cruise line, so she really doesn't have much time for herself, let alone family, friends, or dating. She's shortlisted for the promotion of her dreams, and so all of her sacrifices seem worth it. But the problem here is, of course, the remote social media manager and the bane of her existence, who's also up for this position. They've never met in person, but they've had some epic email battles. And their boss tasks each of them with drafting a proposal on how to boost bookings in the Galapagos, and the best proposal wins this promotion. But the catch is that they have to go on a company cruise together. So they meet on the ship, and of course, I think Henley, this main female character, discovers that this real Graham is nothing like what she imagined, and they explore the islands together and find that the line between loathing and liking is thinner than a postcard. So she starts to question her life choices, I think. And it's what's the point of working all the time if you never actually live? So that sounds like so much fun. I love this cover also. It's just very cheerful. And it's pitched as the Unhoneymooners meets the Hating Game. I loved the Unhoneymooners. I haven't read the Hating Game yet, but I do have it. And I feel like that's something I'm going to enjoy. So I do definitely enjoy this enemies to lovers type trope. This sounds like a lot of fun. I like this setting of the Galapagos. I feel like there's a lot of potential for some fun moments, and I feel like this will be, I guess, kind of nice to have coming out in winter, thinking about summer vacations and things like that. This sounds just delightful. I've heard really good reviews of it already, so I'm super excited to read it for myself. The next book that comes out January 19th that I'll talk about is The Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick, and this is actually a team of writers. This is Marie Brennan and Alice Helms. I have read books from Marie Brennan, and I've very much enjoyed them, so that was kind of how I got exposed to, I guess, this book in the first place. But this is a start to a new trilogy, and it's a dark magic fantasy where we have a con artist returning to the city that betrayed her, so basically, seeking revenge. So we have Arenza, who's a liar and a thief, a pattern reader, and a daughter of no clan. She's been raised in the slums, and she fled that world to save her sister. We also have Renata, who is a con artist who has recently arrived in this city, I guess, and has one goal: to trick her way into a noble house and secure her future. We've got some sort of corrupt nightmare magic that's weaving its way through the city of dreams, poisonous feuds of the aristocrats and the shadowy dangers of its impoverished underbelly kind of all become entangled with Ren at their heart. If she can't sort the truth from the lies, it will mean the destruction of all her worlds. So that sounds very intriguing. I do love a good revenge plot. So I think Arenza and Renata are actually the same person. Because it's that was her past and this is her present. And then this is your future. I'm very intrigued by all of this. I don't know what corrupt nightmare magic is exactly, but I definitely want to know more about that. Next book that comes out January 19th is Shiver by Allie Reynolds. So this is a locked room thriller. And basically, we have Milla, who accepts an off-season invitation to a cozy ski resort in the French Alps. And so she thinks that it's just going to be an intimate weekend, just catching up with some friends. Could have been a decade, since she saw them last, but she's never forgotten the bond they forged on this very mountain during a winter spent fiercely training for an elite snowboarding competition. But, once they arrive, they start to realize something is horribly wrong. The resort is deserted, the cable cars that delivered to them to the mountaintop have stopped working, their cell phones are missing, and inside the hotel, detailed instructions await them, an icebreaker game to draw out their secrets. It's meant to remind them of the enigmatic sixth member of their group who vanished the morning of the competition years ago and has been presumed dead. So they're stranded in this resort, and, we've got increasingly sinister things happening, a looming snowstorm, and there's no one on the mountain that Mila can trust. Someone's obviously gathered them there to find out the truth about this missing member, someone who will stop at nothing to get answers. If this main character is not careful, she could be the next to disappear. So that sounds just wonderful. I think that this is going to be so perfect for the winter. I obviously already love, these close circle murder mystery type things. I very much enjoy the setting of the French Alps. I think that'll be perfect to read in the winter, with a snowstorm looming in. Hopefully it'll be really atmospheric and just absolutely perfect. And I also really like that this has some sort of element with this snowboarding competition. I guess some of you may know this, but I actually used to ski race for several years of my life, from when I was 5 to 16, and I still ski, but not competitively anymore. But I think that aspect, granted it's snowboarding instead of skiing, but still, I think that aspect really draws me in as well. So I'm excited for this one for sure. So then we move to January 26th, and the first book I'll talk about here is We Could Be Heroes by Mike Chen. So this seems to be, I think, a superhero type book, so I'm not really sure if that's necessarily fantasy versus sci-fi, but it's in our world. We have Jamie, who is woken up in an empty apartment with no memory and only a few clues to his identity, but he has the ability to read and erase people's memories, which he uses to hold up banks to buy coffee, cat food, and books. We also have Zoe, who is searching for her past and using her abilities of speed and strength to deliver fast food. And she'll occasionally put on a cool suit and beat up bad guys if she feels like it. But I guess these arch rivals meet in a memory loss support group, and they realize that the only way to reveal their hidden past could be through each other. And they're uncovering some sort of ongoing threat, and a lot more is at stake than just this fragile friendship. We've got a lot of people at risk, and they have to recognize that sometimes being a hero starts with trusting someone else and yourself. So that actually sounds super cool. I do tend to enjoy superhero type things anyway, so I feel very good about this. But I think, I'm intrigued by the fact that Jamie, who has the ability to erase memories, also has no memory himself. So I'm did he do something to himself? I don't know. And I like that they're, these arch rivals, but they're going to, eventually become friends. I think that sounds particularly appealing. And I think it's I think I had seen reviews that were saying it's not necessarily as much about the superhero focus, but just kind of bonding, about bonds with other people, and learning to trust yourself more. And it's the power of choosing who you want to be. So I think that sounds really interesting and potentially very hopeful. So I'm curious to see how this goes. And the last book I'll talk about today comes out January 26th, and that's If I Disappear by Eliza Jane Brazier. So this is an adult thriller, and basically we have this woman, Sarah, who loves true crime podcasts. And it's they give her a sense of control in a world where women just like her disappear daily. She's sure they're preparing her for something. So when her favorite podcast host goes missing, Sarah knows it's time to act. So Rachel has always taught her to trust her instincts. She evidently follows clues hidden in the episodes to an isolated ranch outside Rachel's small hometown to begin her search. So she's convinced that this investigation will make Rachel proud, but the more she's digging into this world, the more off things start to feel, because Rachel is not the first woman to vanish from the ranch, and she won't be the last. And it's Rachel did try to warn her, so I don't really know what that entails, but that sounds really exciting. And I think that this has mixed media formatting of some sort, which is something I really enjoy, so I like that a lot. I tend to enjoy these types of books that are about, that have some sort of true crime element into it, and that sounds really exciting. And I feel we're going to have potentially this unreliable narrator, Sarah. That sounds ominous when she already thinks that these podcasts are prepping her for something, and thinks that Rachel is directly talking to her. I feel that may be a little bit questionable. With that, those are the 13 books that I have to talk about today that I'm very excited about for January. So let me know in the comments if you think you may pick up any of these books. And for your question today, are there other January releases that you're particularly excited about? So with that, I do have a Discord channel, and if you want to join that, the link is in the description below. I hope you're all having an excellent day and are reading something awesome. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a big thumbs up, as that would certainly help me out. But with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up here and see you in the next one.